ain't afraid to die anymore. I'm dying already.
This man's story is truly tragic. In one night, his village is decimated, his wife is murdered, his son dies before his eyes, and his savior is hanged. He was nearly eaten by a bear and had to hide from the wind and snow in his horse's belly. When everything fell apart, he was desperate to survive, because it's the only way he can get his revenge. This film, The Revenant, is a classic. It's so harrowing that you might hesitate to watch it a second time. Almost devoid of good characters, the protagonist's suffering is extreme. As moviegoers enter the theater expecting to admire Leonardo DiCaprio's extraordinary presence, they are instead disturbed by his raw survival instincts and unsettling scenes. Even the director, Alejandro, warns viewers that the film's distressing scenes may be uncomfortable. Set in the 19th century, Hugh serves as a guide for fur trappers, who are essentially the nightmare of beavers. Driven by the upper class's fashion pursuits, beavers become the most sought-after species in the fur trade, leading to the rise of fur trappers hunting for their pelts. With a shot fired by Hugh on the hunt, Arikara began to hunt and pillage the trappers. When Hugh rushes back, the casualties among the trappers are severe. Despite being armed, they are overwhelmed by the sheer number of Arikara. Only 12 men escape on a small boat with a fraction of the beaver pelts. The forest is shrouded in smoke, with crows circling overhead, signifying death. Arikara scavenges the items on top of the body, but the chief is looking for his daughter. Unable to find her, he orders his tribe to trade all the pelts with the French for horses. As he continues his search, the surviving hunters debate how to evade the Arikara. Andrew, naturally consulting their guide, hears Hugh suggest abandoning the boat and trekking over the mountains back to camp. John, however, disagrees, fearing the extra weeks on foot and the risk of hiding the pelts in the woods. Anxious about his payment, Andrew dismisses his concerns, trusting Hugh's expertise in guiding the trappers safely home. Frustrated and harboring resentment, John begins to mock Hugh, bringing up rumors of Hugh's past with the Pawnee tribe, where he allegedly killed a soldier to save his mixed-race son, Hawk. Andrew quickly reprimands John, putting an end to the escalating argument. Hugh, on the other hand, lectured Hawk to keep his mouth shut. Hawk was his child by a Pawnee woman. Some team members remain skeptical of Hugh's plan. Two of them, instead of abandoning the boat, flee downstream to the camp, making John resent Hugh for not being on that boat. However, these two trappers are killed mid-journey by the Arikara, their scalps removed. Hugh decides to lead the group through a barren area back to camp, a place where the Arikara are unlikely to hunt, thus relatively safer. While the hunters rest, Hugh goes hunting alone in the woods and encounters two bear cubs. As he raises his gun, he hears a roar behind him. A massive grizzly bear attacks Hugh relentlessly, its sharp claws tearing open his back. Overpowered by the bear, Hugh is tossed around like a child. With no strength left and his vision fading, he lies motionless, playing dead as the bear drools on his face and presses its paw on his head. Hugh endures the pain silently, even as the bear steps on him, seemingly testing his combat ability. Distracted by her cubs, the bear leaves momentarily. Hugh seizes this chance, picking up his flintlock shotgun. The weapon, primarily used for hunting beavers, is ineffectual against the bear. The bear resumes its attack, biting Hugh's throat and mauling him bloodily. However, the bullet slowly affects the bear, making it dazed. As the bear approaches Hugh again, he draws his dagger, waiting for the right moment to stab the bear in the neck. One man and one bear rolled down the hill and Hugh was crushed by the grizzly. It takes a while for the hunters to find Hugh and remove the bear. They are astounded by Hugh's resilience and strength, surviving a one-on-one battle with a grizzly bear. This scene exemplifies Hugh's composure and attention to detail. Despite the bear's brutal attack, he doesn't strike back blindly, waiting for the bear to come close before firing. His final move, drawing the dagger, is a calculated decision, striking only when the bear is upon him. When Jim corrected Hugh's ankle bone, Hugh fainted from the pain. Taking advantage of this, Andrew and the doctor attend to his wounds, stitching up the gashes on his back and throat. Meanwhile, the Arikara, having stolen the furs, negotiate with French hunters, desiring only horses and guns in exchange. Initially, the French hunters refuse to trade horses, attempting to swindle the chief by pointing out the American hunter's brand on the furs. The chief counters, questioning who the real thieves are, accusing them of stealing everything: land, animals, and even his daughter. He insists on the trade for the sake of his tribe's reputation, needing the horses and guns to find his daughter, unaware that it's these French hunters who have abducted her. This conflict between the Arikara and the trappers was, in fact, instigated by the French hunters, who framed the trappers to profit from the stolen furs. Reluctantly, on Arikara territory and fearing retribution, the French agree to the chief's demands, trading 5 horses for the furs. As night falls, the trappers warm themselves by a campfire. Jim places a string of bear claws in Hugh's backpack, a symbol of bravery and safekeeping, hoping Hugh will pull through. The next day, the trappers continue their journey with Hugh, listless and motionless, on a stretcher. At that moment, Andrew remarks and covers Hugh's eyes with a cloth. He explains that the terrain ahead is predominantly mountainous, and carrying Hugh would only delay their journey. John insidiously persuades Andrew to end Hugh's suffering quickly, arguing that he's unlikely to survive much longer. Andrew decides to grant Hugh a merciful end, but Hawk pleads for his father's life. Ultimately, Andrew can't bring himself to do it and offers a $70 reward for anyone willing to accompany Hugh to the end. Jim immediately agrees, not caring about the money. If there was one person on the team besides Hawk who wanted Hugh to live, it was Jim, the good-hearted kid. No one else volunteers, fearing the Arikara, until Andrew raises the bounty to $100. Hawk and Jim offer their own wages as well. Seeing the opportunity for profit, John agrees to care for Hugh until the end and give him a proper burial. However, in reality, John does little more than dig a grave, leaving Hawk and Jim to tend to Hugh. John simply waits in the woods for Hugh's death. Seeing the scar on John's head, Jim inquires about it. John reveals his story of being scalped by the Arikara, who take their enemies' scalps as a warrior's honor. The sound of the knife scraping his skull and the Arikara's mocking still haunt John, making him desperate to escape their potential pursuit. He sends Jim to fetch water. In Jim and Hawk's absence, John tries to convince Hugh to hurry up and die, claiming that this will allow him to take Hawk and catch up with the larger group, or all 3 of them could die. John even offers to hasten Hugh's death, asking him to blink in agreement. Despite not wanting to die, Hugh inevitably blinks. When Hugh blinks, John immediately ties Hugh up with a rope and presses his nose and mouth in an attempt to suffocate him. Fortunately, Hawk returns in time, attacking John and calling for Jim's help. Meanwhile, Jim, fetching water, doesn't hear Hawk's cries due to the river's noise. Fearing Hawk's shouts might attract the Arikara, John mercilessly kills Hawk and hides his body. Hugh was there to witness this, but he couldn't do anything but watch as his son was brutally murdered by John. When Jim returns, everything seems calm, as if nothing had happened. Hugh struggles to speak, unable to make a sound. Perhaps he fears telling Jim, worried they both might be silenced by John. That night, Hugh expresses extreme hatred towards John. Early the next morning, John woke Jim from his sleep and told him that Arikara had arrived and they had to leave immediately. While packing, Jim is reluctant to abandon Hugh, but John forcibly drags Hugh into a previously dug grave and starts burying him. John told Jim to hurry up and shoot Hugh. They had to go. Unable to shoot Hugh, who is still alive, Jim puts the canteen on Hugh's body, and for his own safety Jim follows John away from Hugh. After an indeterminate time, Hugh musters the strength to crawl out of the grave, grasping the blood-stained earth where his son died. Hugh's mental state shatters. In the frigid snow, he crawls to his son's side, lying down in silent grief. Hugh, an American, was captured by the Pawnee tribe. He slowly rose to prominence through luck and strength, with the chief taking him in and giving him his only daughter in marriage, with whom he had a child. But after his tribe was slaughtered by colonial forces, his wife killed, he murdered a lieutenant to save his son. Hawk became his sole hope and the last memory of his wife. Now, with everything gone, he lies beside his son's lifeless body, determined to survive for revenge. Hugh scavenges for food, breaking open rotting animal bones for marrow. Although cold and hard to swallow, he must eat to regain strength and fulfill his quest for vengeance. Meanwhile, John and Jim are chasing after the main group. However, John's words reveal a flaw, leading Jim to realize he has been deceived. Realizing the truth, Jim is conflicted but knows he can't turn back for Hugh, who might already be dead. He has no choice but to continue forward with John, unaware that Hugh is still alive. Albeit barely, Hugh choked on the water he drank and spewed blood, and the water he drank flowed out of the wound in his throat. If he doesn't do something about it, he'll die of thirst. Desperate, he applies gunpowder to the wound and ignites dry grass to cauterize it. Watched intently by crows, anything edible became Hugh's food. Seeing a reindeer swimming in the river, Hugh instinctively raises a branch and fires a shot at them. However, The reindeer continue to swim leisurely forward, leaving Hugh with no choice but to gnaw on dry leaves. When the Urukhara appear by the river, Hugh hides in the water, trying to evade their arrows by diving under. The current washed him further and further away, but he was saved and floated to the far shore. Hugh was cold and hungry. The long drift had taken its toll on him, and he lay down on the shore and drifted off to sleep. When he woke up, he started a campfire to warm his tired body. He trapped small fish, eating them raw for sustenance. Gaining some strength, Hugh climbs a mountain, witnessing a herd of buffalo frantically running in different directions, chased by wolves that have cornered a lone buffalo. Waking again, he sees a Native American chasing away the wolves with a fire and feasting on the buffalo. Desperately hungry, Hugh approaches, hands raised in submission, and communicates through gestures his need for food. The Native American, seeing Hugh's weakness, gives him a large piece of buffalo liver. Hugh didn't hesitate to take a big bite, but the taste made him vomit. But in order to survive, he ate one bite after another. Even if it was hard to swallow, why not cook it over a fire and eat it raw? When he ate the raw fish, he was probably hungry, but he ate the raw liver to gain the Indians' trust. Hugh ate his fill and fell asleep. Examining Hugh's back, the Native American sees his scars. Normally, Hugh would react to being touched, but he pretends to be just waking up. Lowering the Native American's guard, Hugh offers the bear claw necklace given by Jim, explaining in a hoarse voice how he was mauled by a North American grizzly and betrayed by his team, who killed his son and left him to die. This resonates with the Native American. He belonged to the Pawnee tribe, but his family was killed by the Sioux. Although both are Native American groups, they are not united and often engage in conflict with each other. He now seeks to travel south to find other members of the Pawnee tribe. The Pawnee, Haikuk, riding on horseback, leads Hugh southward. Along the way, they stick out their tongues to catch snowflakes, laughing joyfully like innocent children, finding pure happiness in their shared solitude and sorrow. These two deeply wounded souls have come to accept their reality, realizing that even a bit of happiness is enough to keep going. When a severe snowstorm hits, Hugh's wounds begin to fester, and he collapses again. Haikuk cuts down tree branches to build a tent for Hugh and treats his wounds. He lights a fire outside, heating stones to place in the tent and covers them with snow to generate heat for Hugh. In a dazed state, Hugh dreams of an abandoned church and his son Hawk approaching him. They embrace, but Hugh feels no warmth and realizes he's holding a tree, not his son. The bells were still ringing, and this crumbling church was not a warm haven. The Creator has turned into the Grim Reaper. Hugh isn't ready to join his son yet. He accepts the call of the Reaper, determined to avenge his son and wield the Reaper's scythe. He survives the ordeal, and once the snowstorm subsides, the forest is alive again. But when he came out of the shelter and into the woods ahead, he found Haikuk hanging from a tree with a sign on him. Ironic, isn't it? Who's the barbarian? Nearby, a group of French hunters is celebrating hysterically. Hugh spots Haikuk's spotted horse among them. Just as Hugh is about to sneak away with the horse, the leader of the hunters prepares to brutalize a woman. Coincidentally, she is Pawaka, the daughter of the Urukhara chief. The French hunters had captured her and framed the American trappers, sparking the Urukhara's attacks. Too close to act without being noticed, Hugh uses his gun to save Pawaka and releases all the horses. Escaping on the spotted horse, Pawaka flees in another direction. In his haste, Hugh leaves behind the water bottle Jim gave him. Meanwhile, Jim and John have returned to the camp. John shamelessly boasts about how responsibly he cared for Hugh until his supposed burial, and Andrew rewards him for his supposed diligence. Jim, however, racked with guilt, refuses his share of the money and leaves the room. Andrew, watching out the window, might also be buying his own peace of mind with money. That night, they discuss how to retrieve the furs, planning to wait for the army's arrival to have enough manpower to retaliate against the Urukhara and show them civilization. Early in the morning, Hugh wakes up and encounters the Urukhara again. Luckily, he's alert enough not to fall into the Urukhara's circle, but he was shot in the horse's arse and fell off the cliff with the horse. Miraculously, Hugh survives. As a snowstorm intensifies, knowing he can't withstand the cold any longer, Hugh gets the horse and crawls inside its carcass to escape the freezing temperatures. A horse's body temperature is higher than a human's, and it hasn't been dead for long, but it's still warm and its internal temperature is high. Hugh's cleverness in taking off his clothes was a way of preserving his body temperature through the interaction of his own heat and the horse's heat. Another day passes. The horse is covered in snow and ice, and Hugh gets out of the horse's belly. He set off again on his journey across a deserted continent of ice and snow. At night, he finds shelter in crevices. Etching into a snow wall, Fitzgerald killed my son. As a constant reminder, Revenge becomes his driving force to overcome all obstacles. At the camp, a French hunter arrives, the only survivor of the group, and seeks food from Andrew, who only agrees to exchange it for money. The hunter reluctantly offers his few possessions. Jim's attention is caught by a water bottle, the one he gave to Hugh. Assuming Hugh is dead, he wonders if Hawk might have taken it and is heading towards the camp. After learning where the hunter found the bottle, Andrew quickly organizes a search party for Hawk, offering $10 per person. Instead of finding Hawk, they stumble upon Hugh, alive. Andrew and Jim are astounded, realizing without a doubt that John lied. Andrew hastily returns to the camp to arrest John, but John has already fled, stealing all of Andrew's money. Intent on buying land in Texas to enjoy his retirement, John couldn't wait for the army to retrieve the furs. Furious, Andrew takes out his anger on Jim, accusing him of treachery and imprisoning him in a cage, awaiting punishment. Hugh, indifferent, doesn't plead for Jim but does mention in conversation with Andrew that Jim was also deceived and was simply following orders. Unaware of John's murder of Hawk, Hugh is determined to pursue his enemy immediately. Andrew tells Hugh to rest and recuperate and that he will capture John, but Hugh insists he must join in, as he believes Andrew alone cannot defeat the cunning John. He has already prepared a trap for John. Seeing Hugh's resolve, Andrew reluctantly agrees. The next day, Andrew and Hugh set off together to hunt down John. With Andrew's finances depleted, he can't afford to hire help like he did during the search for Hawk. It's not just for Hugh. Andrew wants to kill the traitor who stole his money. Hugh tracks John through the wilderness, using his skills. At night, Andrew probes Hugh about his reasons for killing his own people, questioning if Hugh truly defied the system. Hugh's response is simple: he wanted to protect his family. Andrew, a calculating capitalist, had previously decided to kill Hugh to avoid disruption in the team, always weighing costs and benefits to maintain his position. But Andrew's anger intensifies after losing his money, ready to abandon the system for personal revenge. But if Hugh does go against the system and catches up with John, it could be Andrew who goes back alone. As they discover John's trail, Hugh instructs Andrew to search the clearing while he checks the woods. Soon, Andrew spots John but is shot and killed due to his slower reaction. Hearing the gunshot, Hugh rushes to find Andrew's scalped body and realizes John is nearby. He cut down some branches and rode on, dragging Andrew into the open snow ahead. Another shot rang out and John in ambush hit Hugh on his horse in front of him. He used his gun to pick off his coat but saw a branch. Hugh skillfully supported Andrew's body on the horse's back with a branch and hit himself on the back of another horse. John, wounded by a gunshot, flees into the woods, with Hugh roaring in rage and relentlessly pursuing him. They finally confront each other in a brutal close-quarters fight. Using axes and knives in a fierce struggle, Hugh eventually overpowers John and pins him to the ground. Just as Hugh was about to end John's life, he spots the Urakura across the river. Recalling Haikuk's words, Hugh realizes a profound truth and decides to let God judge the sinner, not becoming a mere vengeful savage himself. He tosses John into the river, where the Urakura chief, fulfilling Hugh's expectations, kills John and takes his scalp. The Urakura pass by Hugh without harming him, perhaps as repayment for saving the chief's daughter. The film nears its conclusion with these developments. John scalps Andrew to make it look like the Urakura killed him, thinking Hugh was already dead and aiming to divert future pursuit away from himself. Why do you say there are almost no good guys in the film? The only characters who appear as good guys are Jim and Haikuk. Jim is seen as kind-hearted, abandoning Hugh for safety but previously giving him a bear claw and a water bottle, symbolizing his wish for Hugh's survival. Haikuk, a good man in Hugh's eyes, accepts Hugh after he gives him a bear claw, a symbol of warriorship and friendship. Hugh, the protagonist, is far from a good person. He's a cold, ruthless avenger who didn't intentionally save the chief's daughter but did so incidentally while dealing with a French hunter. This unintentional act of kindness ultimately saves his life. Jim never harmed Hugh, yet Hugh doesn't actively defend Jim, merely mentioning him in passing. This indicates Hugh still harbors resentment towards Jim for abandoning him and failing to protect his son, Hawk. He's also not grateful to Andrew because Andrew abandoned him and left Hawk behind, indirectly leading to Hawk's murder. Therefore, in Hugh's plan for revenge, Andrew was also considered a target. To ensure Andrew would join him in the hunt for John, he had claimed to have set a trap for John, but he can't set a trap when he's struggling to stay alive. Learning that John had escaped, he had already planned to use Andrew as the bait. He directed Andrew to search the vast snowy plains while he lay in wait within the woods, biding his time. Don't forget, He was a guide and knew the area like the back of his hand, understanding that most people would hide in spots with excellent visibility. In the end, Andrew was the bait, and Hugh not only used someone else's hand to get rid of Andrew, but also gave Hugh the perfect opportunity to traumatize John. Every tactic in the Book of Revenge was employed by Hugh, truly making him the ultimate hunter in the wilderness. As the film concludes, Hugh seems to see his wife, watching her slowly fade away into the distance, disappearing completely from his life. The film closes on Hugh's bewildered yet resolute gaze,